evening, and welcome back to Whodunit Hall. Allow me to reintroduce myself. I'm Edgeworth, the butler, your guide to the Master's extensive collection of mystery films. Today we're going to continue our look at various fictional detectives throughout the ages, and return to the works of Agatha Christie by examining her most famous creation, a fastidious Belgian with perfect mustaches and a towering intellect. Today we shall look at one of the cases of the famous sleuth, Hercule Poirot.
Hercule Poirot made his debut in Agatha Christie's first novel, The Mysterious Affair at Styles, which was published in 1920. Poirot would go on to be the main character in over 50 short stories and 33 of Agatha Christie's 66 novels. Ironically, despite the character's reception by the public, Mrs. Christie would tire of Poirot by 1930, but she still continued to write about him up through the 1970s, although she did take the opportunity to portray him as a man hopelessly out of date by that point. Poirot's final novel, Curtain, was published following Agatha Christie's death in 1975, as per her instructions. The novel itself had been written around 1940, but Mrs. Christie held on to it, intending for it to be published after her death.
Naturally, as one of Agatha Christie's most famous creations, Poirot has been brought to the big and small screen several times, the most famous of which is, of course, the long-running television series Agatha Christie's Poirot, starring David Suchet. However, many other actors have taken up the role over the years, and I think it's time we give Peter Ustinov a chance to redeem himself for Charlie Chan in The Curse of the Dragon Queen by taking a look at the first of his 6 outings as Poirot, Death on the Nile.
Death on the Nile was released in 1978 and features an all-star cast, including David Niven, Mia Farrow, Simon McCorkindale, George Kennedy, Olivia Hussey, Maggie Smith, Jack Warden, Angela Lansbury, and Betty Davis. The novel was adapted by sleuth author Anthony Shaffer, and the film was directed by John Gilliman. The film did respectably at the box office, though not quite with the same success as the last major Poirot film, Murder on the Orient Express.
However, while we will be looking at Murder on the Orient Express at a later date, we are not here to judge this film based solely on its box office. Rather, let us see how well Peter Ustinov channels Poirot and exercises the little grey cells as we take a look at Death on the Nile.
The film opens with the arrival of heiress Lynette Ridgway, played by Lois Chiles, as she arrives at her home. There she meets her friend Jacqueline de Belfort, played by Mia Farrow. As a point of interest, it should be noted that Lynette's maid Louise, played by Jane Birkin, appears to have been crying for some reason.
She wants to get married, to an Egyptian, no less. She knew absolutely nothing about him, so I had him checked out. And he had a wife already. So you put a stop to it? You bet I did.
This may be a bit unprofessional, but being the third party in another relationship is not that big of a problem here at the Hall. We are all adults, and as the Master has said, he has been the other woman in several relationships over the years, and as such he lets us keep our personal affairs strictly to ourselves.
Jackie tells Lynette she's become engaged, and asks if Lynette will give her fiancé a job at the house.
His name is Simon Doyle, and he's everything I've ever dreamed of. Oh, Lynette, I'll die if I can't marry him. I really will. I'll just die.
Sadly, this was one of the last statements of the Master's first fiancée. She told her father that she would simply die if she wasn't going to be allowed to marry him. The next morning they found what was left of her in the bird bath in the garden.
Lynette agrees to meet Simon, played by Simon McCorkindale, and he and Jackie visit the next day, with highly unexpected results.
Oh dear. I do not envy the gardener who has to clean that bird bath.
News spreads fast, and the wedding comes to the attention of the Ridgway family attorney, Andrew Pennington, played by George Kennedy.
I'll go to Egypt. Hell, she's going to be there for a month. Why, Uncle Andrew. A chance meeting. I'm over there on a trip. Honeymoon lovers. She's not thinking too clear. Get the picture?
And from there, we go to the home of Mrs. Marie Van Schuyler, played by Betty Davis, and her long-suffering valet, Miss Bowers, played by Maggie Smith.
How would a little trip down the Nile suit you?
There's nothing I would dislike more. There's 2 things in the world I can't abide. It's heat and havens.
Good. Then we'll go.
Interestingly enough, this is not unlike many of the arguments I've had with the Master over the years. Although I'm usually the one insisting that he gets out of the house for a while. I keep telling him that bed sores are not a good thing, even if they do look like Margaret Thatcher.
From here, it's off to Egypt, where Lynette and Simon are on their honeymoon. However, it would appear they have an unwelcome interloper.
The Nita-Mankara pyramid is 204 feet high. Each side of the base is 356½ feet.
She's following us about. Deliberately. And effective. Very, very effective.
After Jackie's slightly disturbing appearance, we head for the Sphinx, where we get our first glimpse of Poirot, played by Peter Ustinov. Poirot overhears Lynette and Simon discussing Jackie and watches them right off. That night at the hotel, Poirot encounters an old friend, Colonel Race, played by David Niven.
Shortly I'm going up the Nile on the steamer. And you?
The same, oddly enough.
Oh. In other words, you're following one of the passengers.
No.
And it's at this point that our cast of characters expands. First up, Jack Warden as Dr. Bessner, a physician from Zurich, and John Finch as James Ferguson, a traveling communist.
You've got a good specimen there, huh? The young Kaugumi heiress.
In any decent society.
Well, you may be right.
After this meeting, Pennington arrives, pretending to be surprised that Lynette is at the same hotel. And Poirot and Race have an encounter with romance novelist Salome Otterborn, played by Angela Lansbury, and her daughter Rosalie, played by Olivia Hussey.
So here we are, two famous people in one place.
Oh, please, Charlotte.
I was talking about genius, not mere money, monsieur.
Now, while this next sequence is not entirely relevant to the plot, I do have to share just a few moments with you, because it is a delightfully hilarious sequence wherein Mrs. Otterborn attempts to teach Colonel Race how to tango.
However, the festivities are once again dampened by the arrival of Jackie, which Poirot cannot help but notice. But Poirot himself is noticed by Jackie the next morning, as Lynette has a word with him, which we are not made privy to. However, Jackie does confront Poirot later about the meeting. Poirot informs her that he did not take on Lynette as a client, but he does have something he wishes to tell her.
I say bury the dead. Not as the Egyptians do, preserving the body in order to ensure the immortality of the soul. No, properly, finally. Turn your back on the past.
Sometimes I swear, put this gun right against her head, and then ever so gently.
After this, Poirot encounters Simon, who tells the detective that he has a plan to get Jackie to stop her harassment. The next morning, Simon and Lynette put the plan into action, making Jackie think they have rushed to catch a train to Alexandria, but instead hide and return to the hotel as Jackie rushes to the train station. Later, our cast of characters arrives on the Karnak, the ship that will be taking them down the Nile, and they begin their journey.
And while it appears that Jackie has been dealt with, it turns out that just about every other passenger on the Karnak also has their own reasons for disliking Lynette Ridgway.
I saw you drooling over her pearls.
Shut up, Bowers.
You'd give every tooth in your head to lay your hands on them.
What nonsense, just because you've got a grudge against her, or rather her father. No need to be uncivil.
Grudge? Malouche Ridgway ruined my family. Frankly, Mrs. Otterborn, I don't consider her being likened to a nymphomaniacal baboon. Flattering. And I suggest we leave it to our lawyers to decide what is adequate compensation for being the butt of your vulgar drivel. Good afternoon.
After these revelations, Pennington tries to slide a document he needs signed into a stack of other business for Lynette. Lynette insists on reading everything, but between Pennington's reassurances that everything is in order and Simon's cajoling, she relents. However, at this point, Colonel Race intercedes.
I do hope I'm not butting in. I'm a lawyer. I just wanted to say how much I admire your businesslike attitude. Your father was absolutely right. Never sign a document until you've read it. I'm sure you agree, sir.
Sure.
And the parade of motives goes on.
Madame, you promised me. He's still married, Louise. I implore you. I need that money as a dowry. I've worked hard for you, and you'll continue to do so until I say otherwise.
The next day, the boat stops so that the passengers can take a tour of the ancient temple of Karnak, where we find Ferguson and Rosalie getting on with each other, and finding they each dislike Lynette for their own reasons.
Lynette Ridgway's a leech. Parasite in the skin of society. For God's sake, in a sane world, she'd be thumped off as a warning to the others.
Bumped off?
That's what I said.
Mr. Ferguson.
Jim?
Jim, is it true you can't libel the dead?
As the group explores the temple ruins, someone finds their way to the top and pushes a large stone off a column, intending to crush Lynette. Fortunately, Simon and Lynette manage to get out of the way in time.
However, later that day, Lynette and Simon get another nasty surprise.
Welcome to the Temple of Abu Simbel. Get away from me! Get away!
That night, as the Karnak continues its journey, Poirot again entreats Jackie to resist her need for revenge, but sadly has no success. However, we then find out that Dr. Bessner also has his own problems with Lynette.
My good friend Mara Seligman listened to you too well and allowed you to give her those filthy injections.
I prescribed a course of armadillo's urine. Yeah, I had used it previously with great success.
In the case of poor Mara, she went barking mad thanks to you.
Oh dear. Abigail! Discontinue the Master's armadillo urine treatments immediately! And Eustace, call the pet shop and tell them we don't need the gross of chinchillas anymore. I've just figured out what's been going on with the Master of late.
And so the evening wears on. Before retiring, Mrs. Van Schuyler remarks that her stole appears to have gone missing, and Poirot finds himself feeling quite sleepy. He escorts Mrs. Otterborn to her cabin and spots Jackie about to enter the lounge.
And here is where the evening turns murderous.
Jackie!
Rosalie and Ferguson take Jackie to her cabin and fetch Miss Bowers to look after her while Dr. Bessner sees to Simon. After getting Simon to Dr. Bessner's cabin, Ferguson goes to recover Jackie's gun, but soon reports that it is no longer in the lounge.
But who could have taken it?
But that is only the beginning, as the next morning Louise finds Lynette in her cabin, quite dead.
The manager of the boat puts all authority for the investigation in Colonel Race's hands. Poirot volunteers his services, and Dr. Bessner examines the body.
He was shot with a very small bullet. A .22 caliber, I think. Madame Doyle was dying. She wished to identify the murderer to us, and therefore she dipped her finger in her own blood. She wrote J on the wall, Jacqueline. Oh, what you say is dumb.
Quite so. That sort of thing only happens in cheap detective stories. Wait a moment.
The lady dies instantly. Really? Yeah. There is no time for writing the finger in blood. No. You make a joke? Well, it's a very small one, not in very good taste, I'm afraid.
Dr. Bessner places the time of death between midnight and 2 a.m., which effectively eliminates Jackie as the murderer, as she had been in someone's company from 11:45 in the lounge until she fell asleep under the morphine injection Miss Bowers gave her, and Miss Bowers remained at Jackie's side for the rest of the night. And because of the broken leg he sustained when Jackie shot him, Simon is also unable to have committed the crime.
She was a natural for what the Americans would call a frame-up. At least, Mynheer, you cannot suspect me. Oh, why not? You had a very good reason to kill her. But that was no motive. I mean, I could have sued her and risk ruin. Murder is cheaper. And safer if you don't get caught.
You know, I do believe I should ask Gardenia to make a cross-stitch sampler with those lines on it. The Master's been looking for something to liven up the study.
After Bessner leaves in a huff, Poirot looks around the cabin and sees 2 bottles of nail polish in the bathroom.
Want something in the nail varnish?
On attrape pas les mouches avec le vinaigre.
Beg your pardon?
It's an old French proverb which takes too long to explain.
Poirot and Colonel Race begin their investigation by questioning Ferguson and Rosalie. Poirot points out both of them had ample opportunity to retrieve the gun and, during their frantic dashing around the ship, to go to Lynette's cabin and kill her.
She was a parasite on the skin of society who deserved to be bumped off. Ah, yes, monsieur, bumped off as a warning to the others.
You damn froggy eavesdropper.
Belgian eavesdropper, if you please, sir. You asked a question 2 days ago. I will now answer it for you. You are quite right, mademoiselle. You cannot libel the dead.
However, slander is a perfectly acceptable alternative.
Miss Bowers is next in the hot seat, as it were, and she too had ample opportunity to murder Lynette. Afterwards, Jackie arrives, and Poirot assures her that Simon is doing well and that she has been proven unable to have committed the murder. However, despite this, there is still something which is bothering Poirot.
Why did the murderer go to the lengths of writing J on the wall in blood and then removing J's gun?
Poirot and Colonel Race pay a visit to Simon, but find him inert. After making sure that he's still alive, they revive him. But while talking to him, Louise arrives and is questioned.
Naturally, if I'd been unable to sleep, if I'd stayed on deck, then perhaps I would have seen this assassin enter and leave Madame's cabin.
One final question, Louise. Where are Madame Doyle's pearls?
Her pearls. She was wearing them last night. She put them on the table by her bed.
The pearls were not on the dressing table this morning.
After talking to Louise, Poirot and Race decide to take a short break to freshen up. But Poirot finds a nasty surprise waiting for him in his cabin. After tapping Morse code on the wall to alert Colonel Race, the Colonel arrives and kills the snake, rescuing Poirot. Outside, the two plan their next move, but are distracted by a loud sound coming from the upper deck. The two head to the upper deck to find Mrs. Van Schuyler, who, upon being questioned, reveals that, being a light sleeper in the cabin next to Lynette's, she was awakened by a popping sound the night before. Before Poirot and Colonel Race can investigate further, there's a commotion from the crew, who have found something unexpected in the river.
New Derringer 22. 4 shot. 2 bullets fired. Man's handkerchief. Looks like blood.
And a marble ashtray to send it to the bottom.
And my stove. People are no respecters of other people's property.
Nor indeed of other people's jewelry.
Of course, as we saw earlier, Poirot did hear Miss Bower's claim that Mrs. Van Schuyler wanted the pearls, and as with everyone else, had opportunity to kill Lynette. Afterwards, Poirot insists that the ship get underway while he and the Colonel search for the pearls. The two encounter Mrs. Otterbourne in the bar, and again, Poirot points out her own motive and opportunity to commit the murder.
My world is the world of grand love and passion and romance, not grubby murders. Now, if you'll please leave me alone. Here, Barman. This crocodile has lost its croc.
Oh, there's a croc here, all right. But not the kind she's thinking of.
Out in the hallway, as Poirot and Race talk, a figure rushes by in the background, entering the ice room of the ship, where Lynette's body is being stored. The two investigate, but while they don't find anyone, they do find that the pearls have reappeared around Lynette's neck. Afterwards, they begin searching Pennington's cabin, looking for the document he tried to trick Lynette into signing.
What the hell is going on? We're going through your private papers, sir. Isn't that obvious?
Points to Poirot for honesty.
It turns out the document would give Pennington power of attorney over Lynette's affairs, and Poirot states it was Pennington who dislodged the stone at the Temple of Karnak that nearly killed her. Of course, it goes without saying that Pennington had ample reason to kill Lynette, and since his own whereabouts were unknown at the time of the murder, much like everyone else, he too had ample opportunity to retrieve the gun. Following this, Poirot has another talk with Jackie, who asks to see Simon. The two meet, and Simon forgives her.
And now, dinner.
Anyway, I ordered you a new bottle of wine.
Why?
Because the remains of last night's bottle was a little moldy when he poured it out.
Moldy?
Yes, you know, it had a lot of bits in it.
You drink whiskey, Elliot?
Wine?
Oh, how strange. Of course.
And while the two receive the cold shoulder from nearly everyone in the dining room, one of the porters makes a grisly discovery.
Yes, sir.
Guess who this is?
Money. Looks like a piece of 1,000-franc note. It has to be blackmail. Throat's been cut. With a very thin knife. That's very interesting, Doctor. Are you quite sure that none of yours are missing?
Why do I have to do with the squalid affairs of the lower classes? It is well known they do not have neurosis, just animal passions.
I'm sorry, Doctor. Could you repeat that? I'm certain the rest of the staff and I would like to have a word with you about our so-called lower-class animal passions.
As Poirot and Colonel Race ponder the situation, Mrs. Otterbourne arrives, insisting that she speak with them and Simon at once. Once they arrive in the cabin, she announces that she knows who killed Louise, and by extension, the identity of Lynette's murderer.
And with this revelation and the great Hercule Poirot beaten to the punch, I'm afraid I must stop this review right now. Well, that was unexpected.
Naturally, the gunshot attracts the attention of everyone else, and Pennington is confronted with his revolver.
This is your gun, I believe.
Anybody could have taken that gun from my cabin. Everybody knew it was there.
Already I have unfortunately delayed too long. I would like to see everybody, please, in the saloon, when all will be revealed.
And as we are about to go into the classic Agatha Christie parlor scene, I'm afraid that I really must end this review right here.
Death on the Nile is a splendid mystery in the finest tradition. While there are a few coincidences a bit hard to swallow, namely that every passenger on the Carnac had a motive to kill Lynette Ridgway, it is easily overlooked by the excellent script. The cast is equally brilliant, with everyone turning in excellent performances. Peter Ustinov makes Poirot his own, Mia Farrow plays the unhinged Jackie to the hilt, Lois Chiles makes Lynette somewhat sympathetic, but mostly reprehensible, and a character that it's quite easy to believe that many of the characters would want dead. Angela Lansbury and Jack Warden provide some welcome comic relief in their broad performances as Mrs. Otterborn and Dr. Bessner, and the rest of the cast is just as entertaining to watch. A classic mystery brought to the screen with a classic cast from the reigning queen of crime.
Death on the Nile is readily available on DVD, and it does crop up from time to time on Netflix's streaming service. If you want a shining example of why Hercule Poirot is one of the greatest sleuths of all time, you can do no better than this film. You can, however, do worse, as we shall see as we take a look at another of Peter Ustinov's outings as Poirot in our next visit. However, I must draw this visit to a close. I need to make sure that my orders are being carried out before things get messy in the study. In the meantime, I invite you to join me again for another visit to the Master's extensive collection here at Whodunit. What the? Excuse me for a moment. Eustace! You put that armadillo urine back where you found it! No, I don't care what Abigail said! Go call the damn pet shop!